20 minutes before President Trump's deadline to bomb Iran into oblivion, a ceasefire was announced. Oil prices plunged 13%, the biggest one-day drop since April 2020. And then, within hours, it was falling apart. Iran blocked tankers. Only 3 ships moved. It appeared ceasefire might collapse. But here is the background story nobody is covering. The ceasefire wasn't really brokered by Pakistan. It was China operating from the shadows, using economic leverage Western nations don't have, protecting 45% of its oil imports. And whether the ceasefire holds or not, China already won. So to map every country's energy trilemma, we have to see through their lens. This is the story of how China became the indispensable power in global energy security, not with aircraft carriers, with phone calls, economic leverage, and strategic patience, from ancient Sun Tzu's Art of War to 2026 Art of Shadow Mediation. I'm Jitu at Trillium Energy. Let's decode China's master play. Why China had to act? Before we understand how, we need to understand the why. China's intervention wasn't altruism. It was survival. 45% of Chinese oil imports flow through the Strait of Hormuz. Not 10, not 20, 45. That's 2.1 billion barrels annually. Every day that strait stays closed, China's economy bleeds. Industrial production, transportation, petrochemicals, plastics, everything downstream of crude oil. When the US struck Iran on February 28 and Iran closed Hormuz on 2nd March, Beijing had 48 hours before its strategic reserves became critical. China had 1.2 billion barrels in strategic reserves. Sounds like a lot. That's 5 months of Middle Eastern imports. But when you are burning through while scrambling for alternatives, Russian oil via pipeline, emergency spot cargoes from Africa, Latin America, 5 months can become 3, then 2. And here is the kicker. It's not just China. It's Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, the entire East Asian manufacturing ecosystem that depends on China. Even China depends on. Japan is 90% dependent on Hormuz. South Korea 70%. If they collapse, China's export collapse. So China's calculation was simple. Sit back and let the US military try to force Hormuz open. That failed for 6 weeks. Keep drawing down reserves and hope for the best. Unacceptable risk. Or leverage decades of economic engagement with Iran, the Belt and Road investments, the sanction bursting oil purchases, the financial lifelines when Iran had nowhere else to turn to, and broker a deal quietly. Beijing chose option 3rd, and they did it without firing a shot. Beijing's diplomatic network. China didn't call Tehran directly. Too visible. Too easy for Western intelligence to intercept and complicate. Instead, they activated a diplomatic network built over decades. Pakistan, Turkey, Egypt. These weren't random choices. These are countries with deep ties to both China and Iran. Countries the US still talks to, and countries with their own interest in keeping Hormuz open. Pakistan was a mere face. Prime Minister Sharif proposed the 2 week ceasefire extension publicly, got the credit. But behind the scenes, Beijing was feeding talking points, providing economic assurances, coordinating the timing. Turkey served as the channel to Iran's hardliners. As a Muslim majority NATO member, Turkey with independent foreign policy, Turkey can talk to Tehran without looking like a US proxy. Erdogan's government has maintained trade through sanctions with Iran. That credibility mattered, and Egypt was the Arab League voice for them. Sisi's government has Chinese financing for massive infrastructure projects, the new administrative capital, Suez Canal expansion. When Cairo says something, even Gulf states do listen. And the US listened to Cairo as well. So messages flowed. Beijing to Islamabad, to Tehran, Beijing to Ankara, to Tehran Revolutionary Guard, Beijing to Cairo, to Washington via Gulf intermediaries. 3 separate channels, redundant, ensuring the message got through, even if one was compromised. And the messaging was consistent. The US will destroy your infrastructure. You will lose Hormuz anyway, but gain nothing. Or you can negotiate a pause, reopen partially, keep some leverage, avoid total devastation. China ensure the US doesn't violate the terms. We will make it worthwhile for your economically. To Washington, the messaging was through Pakistan and Egypt channels. The message was different. You have made your point. Regime is shaken, but Hormuz staying close hurts your GCC Middle Eastern allies more than Iran. Europe's in crisis. Asia is in crisis. Your strategic reserves are half depleted. Take the win. Take the win. We will ensure Iran complies with the limited reopening. And critically, China promised both sides. We will be the guarantor. If Iran violates, we step back and let the US resume strikes. If US violates, we back Iran publicly. That guarantee, backed by Chinese economic weight, gave both sides cover to step back. 90 minutes before Trump's deadline, Pakistan announced the ceasefire. The world thought that Islamabad brokered it. Washington quietly acknowledged China's role. Tehran knew exactly who made it possible, and Beijing stayed in the shadows, publicly anyway. That's how you mediate a crisis in this 21st century, not with press conferences, with economic leverage, trusted intermediaries, and strategic ambiguity. At the peak of the crisis, Western powers, US, UK, France, introduced a resolution condemning Iran's closure of Hormuz, demanding immediate reopening, threatening further sanctions. Standard United Nations playbook. China's representative took the floor and, in carefully diplomatic language, argued 3 things. 1. The resolution was unbalanced. It condemned Iran but ignored the strikes that provoked the closure. 2. It ignored root cause. Decades of sanction on Iran, maximum pressure, regime change attempts. 3rd, it would back Iran into corner with no face-saving exit, making negotiations impossible. Then China votes no. Russia joined in. Double veto. Resolution blocked. On the surface, Western media picked up. On the surface, Western media said China backing Iran. But let's look deeper. That veto accomplished three different strategic objectives for China. If the resolution passed, Iran would be under massive international pressure immediately. No room to negotiate privately. Every day without a deal looks like defiance of the United Nations. China's veto removed that pressure, gave Tehran breathing room to consider proposal without looking weak. Every developing nation was watching and they saw the message. China will stand against Western unilateralism. If you are under pressure from the US, we will provide a political cover. That was the messaging. And China's soft power, that's building a coalition for future conflicts. With the veto, China became indispensable. Iran couldn't get United Nations relief without Beijing. And US couldn't get United Nations pressure on Iran without Beijing agreeing. That's the leverage. That's the middleman position every mediator wants. And here's the genius. The veto wasn't final opposition. China signaled privately to both parties, we will support a resolution if it is balanced, if both sides make concessions, if we broker the deal first. So the veto became the opening move in mediation, not an obstruction. Classic. Sun Tzu, appear weak when you are strong and strong when you are weak. The veto looked like obstructionism. It was actually the foundation for mediation. Then comes the power play of economic leverage versus military might. Let's zoom out a bit because this crisis reveals something fundamental about power in 21st century. The United States demonstrated overwhelmingly military might, struck Iran on February 28, killed the supreme leader, destroyed nuclear facilities, targeted military command, announced it would bomb every bridge and power plant if Hormuz didn't open, deployed carrier strike groups, threatened civilization, ending destruction. Result? Hormuz stayed closed for 40 days. More than 1,000 ships strapped. Largest supply disruption in history. Military might achieved regime damage, but didn't achieve the strategic objective, reopening Hormuz. Meanwhile, China made phone calls, activated economic relationships built over decades, didn't fire a shot, didn't spend $1 on military operations, and got both sides to agree to a ceasefire. Now, even if the ceasefire collapsed after that Lebanon strikes or three contradictory interpretation, Iran chose Hezbollah over Hormuz revenues. But even in collapse, China won. Because the lesson is loud and clear to every country watching. Economic leverage produced a ceasefire. Military might didn't. This isn't about military weakness. The US has overwhelming conventional superiority that everyone knows. But in complex crisis where the objective isn't destroying the enemy, but solve a problem that affects global energy supply chain, economic leverage gets the result that military force can't. China is building a new toolkit for global influence, not just military, not just economics, but integrated using economic ties to enable diplomatic mediation that advances strategic interest without military cost, or rather zero military cost. Three scenarios. China wins them all. So where does this go? As I said, 3 scenarios. And in every single scenario I observed, China comes out ahead. For example, scenario 1, the ceasefire holds. China continues mediating through Pakistan, Turkey, Egypt. The Lebanon issue gets quietly resolved. Maybe Iran accepts it not or covered. Maybe Israel agrees to pause. Hormuz reopens slowly and gradually. Ships starts moving. China wins. The successfully mediated Chinese flagships got out preferential treatment throughout. Beijing has now proven it can resolve what American force couldn't. Every energy importing nation is taking a note. China is the go-to mediator for future energy crisis. Is a textbook case now. Scenario 2, more likely selective stalemate. The ceasefire technically holds no major strikes, but Hormuz doesn't fully reopen. Iran maintains permission-based system, 10 to 20 ships per day instead of 130 or 140. Chinese ships pass, Indian ships negotiate, some European buyers get through, US and Israel linked cargoes stays blocked. This might become a new normal for months. Prices stay elevated. Alternative routes maxed out. Global economy adjusts painfully but doesn't collapse. China wins. They become the essential middlemen, except 5 countries like India and some others. Every other country's cargo gets negotiated, runs through Chinese back channels. Iran becomes more economically dependent on China due to Petro 1. Beijing extracts long-term contracts, infrastructure deals, political alignment. China doesn't solve the crisis, they manage it profitably. Scenario 3, escalation. The ceasefire collapse, maybe completely. Trump follows through, strikes on every bridge, power plant, and more infrastructure. Iran retaliates with everything. Hormuz shuts for months. Oil hits 130, 150, maybe 200, as analysts were saying. China's nightmare scenario, right? Wrong. Even here, China wins strategically. Yes, China's economy might take a hit. 45% of oil imports disrupted, rationing, industrial slowdown. But China accelerates deals with Russia for overland oil and gas, massive pipelines, emergency contracts. They offered to do this during the crisis as leverage. Now they execute. Then China approaches Saudi Arabia and the UAE with a proposal. The US can't protect you. We will guarantee your pipeline exports. We will provide economic support for the lost revenue. In exchange, we get preferential access and you align politically with Beijing on key issues. If that happens, the entire Middle East power dynamics shifts. China displays US influence through economic guarantee, not military presence. It's painful for Beijing for short term, but the long term, the Petro 1, if they get it, they might have will broke US dominance in the Gulf. So, in all 3 scenarios, ceasefire holds, selective stalemate, or a full-blown escalation, China comes out with their strategic gains. They are either successful mediator, the essential middleman, or the power broker that filled the US vacuum force created. That's not luck. That's the strategic positioning. That's the understanding that in a complex crisis, the mediator who can talk to all sides gains regardless of outcome. It can establish the new world order in energy security. So let's bring it home. The Hormuz crisis isn't over. Ships are still trapped. The ceasefire is not broken though, but the real story is already written. China demonstrated that economic leverage and strategic patience can achieve what military might couldn't. Not perfectly. If the ceasefire collapsed, but the Beijing got both Iran and the US to the table, protected its energy supply through preferential treatment from Iran, and positioned itself as the indispensable mediator. The message to the world is loud and clear. If you are an energy importing nation watching this, you see American military might can destroy but can't rebuild, can strike but cannot solve. China's economic engagement with the difficult regimes like Iran, Venezuela, Russia gives them leverage when crisis hit. This is the new world order emerging, not unipolar American dominance, not bipolar US-China Cold War II, but multipolar where economic leverage matters as much as military might, where the country that can talk to everyone, every pariah has a power, where the strategic patience beat overwhelming force. From ancient Sun Tzu's Art of War, written in 2500 years ago, supreme excellence consists of the breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. To today, 2026, the art of shadow mediation. China updated its playbook, and the Hormuz crisis was the debut performance of that. The ceasefire may have collapsed or not, but China's strategic position is stronger than ever before the crisis began. That's winning. That's power in the 21st century. I am Jitu at Trillium Energy. If this analysis opened some new thought process for you, then please hit subscribe, hit the bell icon, and let me know in the comments, is China's mediation success a one-time play, or does this signal a fundamental shift in how global crises get resolved? So this time we watch through Chinese lens. We will be coming up with American, Iranian, Israeli trilemmas, their shadow diplomacies and their plans very soon. Till then, bye-bye.